Hi all, and welcome to week one's discussion of our sources. Always on in the discourse of the digital is the main theme this week. This week we have one reading to go over, and then I'll talk kind of like my own personal reflection and note that the general purpose and my educational philosophy of courses is that I present you some readings. I kind of tell you why they're important to me, why they're important to include in the course, and then you kind of move on and make your own choices as to why they're important. You can disagree with the source, my reflection of it. It's all about creating a dialogue. I don't have tests in the course because I think tests seem like, okay, here's the right and wrong answer, which it's always good to have some benchmarks of maybe figuring out if you read the, not I want to say the right things, but if you're reading the article in a specific way, but you might disagree with some of the points. So I think it's important to always have a dialogue about the work rather than a saying like this is right and wrong. So, again, this is my work to help you figure out kind of why I chose the readings. It's always good to have an instructor tell you why they chose something so that you understand how to read it. Knowing the author and knowing the why they were selected is a big part of like understanding the content, I think, at certain times. So the kind of the reading that we're doing is always on email to your brain. They think the source gets us thinking about what it means to be a writer in a digital world, but it also brings up many helpful and questionable ways about thinking what is writing, discourse, technologies, contemporary forms of communication. I think for our source, you're going to kind of discuss it with your classmates, and do you agree that with the assessment of it? And so basically, yeah, that's kind of a general overview. I think the purpose of what it does is it debates how language, people, behaviors, and social norms have evolved through contact with technology. How have we as people, how have our procedures, how has our writing, how has our communication changed through this digitalization of information? It argues that technology has made us increasingly on, and those not on are still aware of technologies. So, if we always have our smartphone with us and we're looking at social media information, or we're getting our emails, or there's like never a time where we just don't have access to potential forms of communication, kind of like this idea that we were always on. And even if you're a type of person that will leave your phone at home, or goes camping just to get away from Wi-Fi at all possible things, you're still aware of these technologies, and that you still have to make conscious decisions that you don't want to be on, so to speak. This idea also that technological domestication has altered the communication landscape. The idea of domestication is that, it's kind of like technology is everywhere now. It's ubiquitous. Like we all, everybody has a smartphone. It becomes kind of like the way we interact with people. Well, maybe I'm sure you can argue somebody that doesn't have some type of smartphone, but in general, people have these things. It's become part of our landscape. You might be able to live without an Alexa, but a lot of people have them. You might be able to live without backing up car cam thing in your vehicle, but it's normal and it's regular to have those type of things. So it's this domestication, and these ideas is that these different forms of technologies have altered the way we talk about, see the world, communicate with others. They also make it cheaper and simpler to talk to people that aren't physically present. I know I think I was explaining that I recently returned from the Netherlands, and I was able to use WhatsApp and talk to people that were here. I didn't have to have a lot of actual minutes to call anybody or talk to people. I didn't have to write snail mail and mail a letter back home. The technologies were free. I could talk to people that weren't there. I could keep track with my mom. My mom passed away while I was there, which was an awful experience, but I was sort of WhatsApping her on her deathbed. I know it's kind of morbid, but I was able to sort of be there even though I wasn't physically present. Also, that technology has let us being an author or publisher is easier when it comes to privacy, or publisher is easier. That's one thing. You can write things and put it on the web for others to see. You don't have to write the newspaper and they decide who's going to publish something. You don't have to petition for some other communication company or broadcaster to put what you have out there. Everybody can do it. With that comes privacy consequences of you're giving parts of your thoughts away, and you are kind of giving yourself an online archive of your thoughts and things. But that was kind of a secondary point of this, I think, reading. But I personally wanted to mention that because I'm interested in those consequences. But that is for a different course. This time we're talking about just the communication in general and the technology's impact on that, which I guess does involve privacy, but not in this focus right now. So communicating at a distance can cause consequences of degrading writing and altering social connections. I'd say for better or for worse. I don't think we can degrade things and have it better, but at the same time, the article I think was kind of grappling with the idea that distance changes the way we interact with people. I think that the author doesn't like that. I got the feelings that they didn't like that. They thought the world was getting worse off for not having this close social connections. And in some ways, I'll talk about this later, but I agree with that. But then other ways, I think that this is a dated idea that the face-to-face is somehow superior to online, and I guess it is in some ways, because I would have rather been there with my mom at the end, or I'd rather be there with family than FaceTiming with them. But there's also benefits and drawbacks to both. So I'll talk to that in a different slide. The author also talks about 2 ways that technology has produced change, but they actually talk about 3 ways, so I'll just say that the 3 ways that technology has produced change is that they control, the controlling who we interact with and when has been altered. You could avoid walking next, or you could cross the street to avoid talking to somebody, but you used to always answer the phone, but now you have caller ID, and you might not answer when you want to. There's just ways, good and bad ways, where you can avoid people nowadays. I sound like an older individual that's reminiscing about the past, but which I'm not. So anyway, so we control who we act with and why we are able to alter the volume control. But I would also argue that the author at the same time says we're not able to alter the volume control because we're always on. So a little contradictory at times, I think. But the effects on writing are now questionable, or for better or for worse. We have more practice in writing, but the more we do, are we becoming sloppier and have less quality? And then also communication has changed because we don't anticipate the reunion quite as much. We now have a constant stream of real-time information. So anyway, this article kind of talks about different ways technology has made an impact on us, and whether or not we're going to necessarily agree with it. I think the author just wants to bring up that times are changing, and we need to grapple with what that means. But that makes me wonder, this is written in 2008, and to me it feels really dated. The idea that we have this on and off and offline, online, face-to-face, in real life, distance communication. I think when people first really started experiencing this, that was something that was really meaningful to them, to think about how online and offline communication are different. And I think that's still a thing to think about, but I don't think we're thinking about it in quite the dichotomy, or the two such polar opposites as maybe they used to. And always carried the kind of these hidden assumptions that face-to-face was better, and it's better to do that. And yeah, the pandemic, I do believe, has shown that we do need personal communications, and Zoom isn't going to cut it. But at the same time, there is a value in that online communication. And for someone like me, who's kind of pretty shy and I get socially nervous, talking through like doing an online course is like sometimes even better for me, because I feel like I get to know students a lot better with like the slow responses that you can make. You know, we don't have to talk face to face. We can kind of email. When you're ready, you can email me back, that kind of thing. So it kind of reduces some of the social anxieties. But that's just something to think about. I think it's hard to say with one is better or worse. Also, the individual says the data collected here from 2003, for me, is like a red flag to think critically about the conclusions that they come to. Because not only is 2008, when it was written a while ago, that the fact that the data was from 2003, and I personally, you know, I'm 41 now, you know, I wasn't really online regularly. I mean, I was probably starting in the mid-90s, but it wasn't like such a big part of my life back in 2003. It was there, but it wasn't like I didn't Google everything, you know. so it's just something to think critically about. The other thing is, like, I'm really bothered by that the person well, I guess I should say first. I'll get to that. I'll leave in suspense. You know, that the person also kind of talks about language, communication, words. They all kind of you know, not use the words interchangeably, but I don't get this big distinction that we're going to really hit on for this course about how the difference between language and communication and discourse all kind of mean different things. That's just a point to bring up so we can talk about it later. But this is where it's like, I kind of get the back to that point where it's like it kind of bothers me. You know, is there good or bad writing? The idea of prescription, and this is the perfect way to do something, and somehow language is degraded, and should we blame technology? You know, these things are all questions that I have. I don't think I can actually go out and see this on this PowerPoint, but there's this, if you're looking at the PowerPoint, you can see the pessimist archive, and on Twitter, I think it's funny, like it's a provide historical tweet, like newspaper headlines about how, you know, the unicycle is going to bring the ruin of all mankind, or somehow reading with electric lights is bad. So there's always this idea that we have like new technologies are bad and they're destroying the way of our life. So regardless of ideas, I think this article at least starts a conversation about what technology does to our, I gotta figure that out. It's not to our language, to our language and communication for this class, and, you know, it starts to talk about issues of digital discourse and identities. You know, how does technology change the way we communicate with others, and why is that important? So my reflection is, you know, overall with, you know, the argument's critique, and then my meta critique of that, the argument, you know, how has technology changed communication and language? You know, has this assessment changed since 2008? These are all the questions I'm left with. You know, what is unique about digital discourse, the digital and discourses? And we're really going to hit on this in Unit 2. Like, how does technology change the way we talk to people in ways other than like degrading our the way we write or something like that? You know, what privilege is built into the idea of having good and bad writing? I'm really into this idea of like what is good and bad in prescription, especially with, you know, on an online class. I know maybe many people here that aren't, English isn't their favorite subject or their first language, you know, might not necessarily want to write a bunch of discussion posts where you have to put your writing on display. So, you know, there's a privilege to this idea that we can, that there's like good and bad writing to write. And being able to feel comfortable in that space. So, and again, as with every week, the purpose of the readings is to guide you into your own inclusion, not necessarily tell you what to believe, but show you different perspectives, encourage your own critique. You know, to be bold-ish and share my own thoughts, I think that technologies offer particular affordances that do change your communication. I would say mostly for the better, but, you know, I also know that they can play too much of a role in our life, and then language evolves, and better or worse is debatable and privileged, and we should be cautious about how we rank language and our abilities to perform at certain levels in the first place. You know, we'll come back to many of these topics throughout the course, so hopefully this just provides a nice introductory place and space for you all. So great, thank you, and have a good rest of the week.